Chapter 211 Game of Lies. Chapter 211 Game of Lies. With a bit of disappointment, Sunny realized that all types of physical activities were out of the question. Not only because Effie was going to win every damn game, but also because Cassie couldn't participate in most. If that was the case, they would have to settle for a battle of wit. Instead, after thinking for a while, he made a few preparations and addressed his companions in a mischievous tone. "Alright, let's have another competition. This time, it will be a challenge for your minds." Sunny paused for a few moments, and then smiled. "And to spice things up this time, there will be a prize. The winner will get this." With that, he produced the Ascended Soul shard that he had gotten from the corpse eater from behind his back and showed it to everyone. The beautiful crystal shined with an alluring, ethereal light. Except for Nephi's, who was resting with her eyes closed, everyone stared at the shard with a lot of interest. Sunny grinned out. Of course, they were interested. It was very rare to see one of these. After all, he didn't really have a use for this thing right now, though. And making the cohort stronger would, in turn, increase his own chances of getting through the expedition alive. So parting with the shard was not that detrimental, especially if he could have some fun in return. Effie was the first one to speak. "What are the terms of the competition?" Sunny put the crystal away before answering. "It's really simple. I'll give you a riddle, and the first person to answer correctly wins." "How does that sound?" The huntress looked at him with doubt and shrugged. "Sounds boring. But all right, let's play." Smiling, Sunny commanded the shadow to separate from him and put the ordinary rock on it. Then, he turned to Effie and said, "Listen carefully. Imagine, if you will, that the two of us, my shadow and I, are in possession of a rare treasure. One of us is an honorable, extremely attractive awakened that can tell no lie, while the other one is a vile, ugly, stupid devil that would never tell a word of truth. But you don't know which one is which." Effie grinned. "I mean, isn't it obvious?" Sunny blinked. "Shut up. Also, it's an imaginary situation. Okay? Anyway, you have to find out which one of us is hiding the treasure. If you do, you'll get the treasure. If you don't, the devil will kill you. You can only ask one question, either to me or the shadow. Understand?" The huntress giggled and flexed her muscles. "Can I just beat the answer out of you?" Sunny observed her vigorous figure for a moment too long, and then smiled. "You can. Also, you're dead." Effie stared at him in bewilderment. "What? Why?" He shrugged and glanced in her direction with disdain. "Did I not tell you that you can only ask one question? Well, who told you to ask whether you can beat me up or not? What a stupid way to waste a question." While the unruly huntress was throwing daggers at him with her eyes, Sunny turned away and said, "Next." Kai smiled apologetically at Effie and approached him. "All right, Knight. What's your question? Do consider that our roles might have changed since the last round." The charming young man gestured at the marble beneath his feet and addressed the shadow. "What color is the stone I am pointing to?" Since Sunny had expected such a turn of events, the ordinary rock immediately answered in the deepest voice he could muster. "White." Kai looked at Sunny with a triumphant smile and said, "So, I win. The shadow is obviously the honorable awakened." Sunny gave him a nod. "You indeed learned which one of us is a dirty liar. Surprise, it was me. However, that was not the task. The task was to find out which one of us is hiding the treasure, and you have already used up your only question. So, sorry, buddy, but you're also dead. I'll miss you very much." In this hypothetical situation, the charming archer sighed and looked at him with reproach. Sunny raised his eyebrows. "What? Why are you looking at me like this? Be grateful that I allowed you to play at all. With your flaw, you are like a walking cheat as far as this game is concerned." He scowled, then added, "In fact, the mere fact that you claim to have a flaw is an affront to us, truly flawed people." Kai lingered for a bit, and walked to the side to sit near Effie. Sunny had to suppress his laugh when he noticed that the boisterous huntress reacted to being this close to the charming young man's deific body pretty much exactly the same as he himself sometimes reacted to her. "Get your head out of the gutter." Pure thoughts, Effie. A wide grin still found its way onto his face. Shaking his head, Sunny turned away to call the next contestant, but Kai suddenly spoke, interrupting him. "You're not entirely right, you know," he said gently. Sunny raised an eyebrow. "About what?" The archer looked down before answering. "About my flaw. Yes, it is not as heavy of a burden as many others have to carry. But it's still a curse." "What is he talking about?" "It's almost entirely like a second aspect ability." Looking at Kai with a doubtful expression, Sunny asked. "Yeah? How exactly? Please explain, because I really can't think of a situation where this flaw of yours could be a burden." The beautiful young man was silent for a while, and then looked up at Sunny with a sad smile. "Imagine hearing the person who is the most important to you in the whole wide world telling you that they love you, only to realize that they don't. Imagine listening to your friend's words of encouragement, only to understand that he secretly wishes for you to crash and burn." He sighed. "Ignorance is bliss, Sunny. After returning from my first nightmare, I had to come to terms with the fact that most of the people in my life were not who I thought they were. And that what hid behind their smiles was ugly and vicious." Kai gestured to himself and said, "Because of who I am, and how I am, there was always a whirlpool of people around me. But after learning their true faces, I couldn't, well, let's just say that, if I had the choice, I would have preferred to stay blissfully blind to the truth forever." He grew quiet. "Damn." Suddenly, Kai smiled. "But that's why I enjoy spending time with you so much, Sunny. No matter how bizarre the things you say are, they're always true. I never met anyone as stupidly honest as you. It's very refreshing." Sunny shifted uncomfortably. Did he just call me stupid?" Now he was kind of sorry for mocking the charming young man about his flaw. Perhaps it would be useful to someone like Sunny. But to a person like Kai, who always attracted the worst kind of attention from people, it could really be incredibly painful. The spell knew what it was doing. It always hit you in your most vulnerable spot. Damned spell. The being that weaved it must have been the worst kind of a sick bastard. Chapter 2 12 Knights and Knaves. Chapter 2 12 Knights and Knaves. Sure. One day Kai would inevitably learn that Sunny was not as honest of a person as he considered him to be. But until then, having the naive archer believe in this ridiculous notion was rather beneficial. Turning away with a bit of awkwardness, Sunny glanced at Castor and called, "Next!" The proud legacy was looking at Nightingale with a heavy expression. Hearing Sunny's voice, he lingered for a moment, and then shook his head. It seemed that Castor did not want to play his game. Sunny was also suddenly painfully aware that between the six of them, for people had openly shared their flaws with the rest, be it out of necessity, or because of trust. Only two had not. One of the two was Sunny, and the other one was Castor. Sunny knew why he was hiding his flaw from everyone, but what was the proud scion's reason? It sort of went against his whole honorable and dependable persona. With how devoted he acted toward Nephias and the cohort, it was strange to see him keeping secrets. Was his reason the same as Sunny's, a dire vulnerability that the flaw would uncover? Or was there some other reason? Maybe he didn't trust the members of the cohort as much as he tried to make them think he did, and if so, why? With a shrug, Sunny left Castor alone. There was no point in lingering on these thoughts now. Until he had more information, any conclusion he could make would be useless, anyway. Looking at Cassie, he smiled and said, "Hey, Cass. Wanna give it a try?" The blind girl hesitated for a bit, and then slowly approached him. While she was walking over, Sunny couldn't help but think back to a conversation he had with her in the distant past. Back then, Cassie had told him that knowledge could be the heaviest thing in the world. The burden of her flaw, while completely different from Kai's, was at the same time eerily similar. They both longed for the bliss of ignorance, but were doomed to always bear the crushing weight of unwanted knowledge. When Sunny thought about it, he found that all members of the cohort were connected with each other by invisible strings. Many things about them were like reflections, simultaneously the same, but also completely opposite, like the fact that he could tell no lie, while Kai could not be lied to. Or the fact that Nephi was like sunlight, while he was made of shadows. Cassie could not see, while he had basically two pairs of eyes. Changing Star dreamed of destroying the nightmare spell, but Effie dreamed of making it her paradise, and so on. Were these the strings of fate? Or was he just making empty connections because that was what humans were prone to do? Come to think of it, only Castor didn't seem to be connected to any of them in any kind of a meaningful way. What was that all about? Cassie sat down near Sunny, pulling him out of his thoughts. He forced out a smile. Ah, right. Just like I said, the roles might have switched. So, what is your question? Cassie smiled and gestured to the shadow. My question is, if I were to ask Sunny which one of you has the treasure, what would he say? Sunny hesitated for a few moments, then gave the ordinary stone a mental command to speak one of the answers that he had whispered to it in advance. In the same comically deep voice, the shadow seemed to speak. The shadow has it. Cassie nodded and turned to Sunny with subtle glee on her exquisite, doll-like face. Sunny, you have the treasure. Give. With that, she expectantly outstretched her hand. With a disappointed sigh, Sunny put the Ascended Soul shard in her palm and said in a listless voice, Congratulations. You've won. Great job, yay. Cassie grasped the shard and giggled. Meanwhile, Effie leaned forward with a bewildered look. What? That's it. She stared at the blind girl in astonishment, and then asked, How the hell did you do it? Cassie smiled and crushed the shard in her small fist, absorbing the soul essence. Then she shook her head and said, It's simple, really. No matter who you ask about the other person's answer, their answer will always be the opposite of the correct one. That's because the awakened would have to tell the truth about the lie, while the devil would have to tell a lie about the truth. Do you understand? Effie thought for a moment, then shook her head. Nope. All the words you said seem to be familiar, but I don't understand crap. What do you even mean? Cassie laughed. Well, you should think about it in your free time. Or, just beat Sunny up the next time he decides to tease you with such riddles. With that, she went away, quite happy with herself. Sunny watched her go with his mouth wide open. Did she really just say that? Meanwhile, the perplexed huntress was staring at Sunny with a deep frown. Yeah. I might just do that the next time. He paled. What's up with that? This was an honest competition. Don't be a sore loser. Effie grinned menacingly. Sore? Let's see which one of yous will be sore when I'm done with you. What kind of soreness does she mean, I wonder? Wait, no. Why would I wonder about that? Standing up, Sunny glanced at Effie and scoffed. Who's going to be done with who? Don't flatter yourself, Beanpole. With that, he walked away with contempt clearly written all over his face. His pace, however, was suspiciously hurried. A while later, the day was drawing to a close. Some of the memories had already restored themselves, so almost everyone was wearing their clothes and armors, which, as far as Sunny was concerned, was a real shame. From a purely aesthetic point of view, of course, however, something else attracted his full attention. At the far end of the marble arch, Nephi and Castor were standing facing each other, with sharp swords in their hands. They were about to clash. Chapter 213 Sword Saints. Chapter 213 Sword Saints. Back when Nephi was teaching Sunny how to use the sword, he had never been good enough to be her sparring partner. Once he learned enough to be of any use in a training fight, their fragile alliance had already broken and shattered to pieces. Apart from that short altercation on the somber slopes of the Ashen Barrow, they had never actually crossed swords with each other. Now, it seemed, Changing Star had found a reliable sparring partner. Castor had not only replaced Sunny as her right-hand man, but also filled the roles that Sunny had been either reluctant or unfit to take on. Well, good for them. Once the memories of the cohort were close to being fully restored, Nephias and Castor moved to the far end of the White Arch to practice. Now, they were standing opposite each other, ready to begin. Although no one called him over, Sunny approached the two legacies and sat down, ready to enjoy the spectacle. He was keenly interested in observing these two immensely skilled swordsmen in action. Both of them had been trained for combat from the day they could walk. Watching them would surely be helpful to his understanding of battle styles and techniques. Not to mention that he was very interested to see the rematch between Nephias and Castor. The last time he saw them fight, Changing Star had lost, but not by much. She also had held back her aspect ability at that time, but he doubted that that would change today. Nef's flame could be used both to heal and annihilate, but sadly, not to train. Castor glanced at him and frowned with visible displeasure. Was he irritated because Sunny was about to learn a thing or two about his technique? Or because Sunny was ruining his alone time with Nephias? Either way, I don't care. What are you doing? Sunny shrugged. Watching. Why? Does this part of the arch belongs to your clan or something? The proud legacy shook his head and turned away. Do as you wish. Nef glanced at Sunny and didn't say anything. However, he could tell that she didn't mind that. In fact, it was almost as if she was approving of his decision. Without wasting any more time, the two of them clashed in a whirlwind of steel, moving with the kind of speed that made it difficult for Sunny to follow along. The clangor of swords filled the air. A bit stunned, he stared at the furious fight with a blank expression. Damn. After the months of hunting monsters in the Dark City and his lessons with the Stone Saint, Sunny thought that he had developed his skill a lot. And he did. It's just that compared to Nephias and Castor, he was still so far behind that it was nothing short of disheartening. Before, he had sometimes entertained the thought of maybe being able to stand against them, well, at least one of them, on equal ground. But now, this illusion was ruthlessly broken. If things went south and he ended up on the opposite sides of the barricades with Castor, facing him would be tantamount to committing suicide. For now, at least. Which, of course, simply meant that instead of facing him, Sunny would have to stab him in the back. Free Web Novelty noted. He wasn't going to take on an enemy of this caliber in a forthright manner, anyway. What was he, a fool? Concentrating on the fight, Sunny watched attentively. With the benefit of his new experience, he was able to discern more and learn more from how these two experts moved and acted. Sometimes, he was even able to predict what they were going to do next. However, as time passed, a subtle frown appeared on his face. What is she doing? That doesn't make sense. Sunny had been able to notice two unexpected things from how Nephias fought against Castor. The first one was rather easy to spot. While Castor did not use the full extent of his incredible speed, he did use a fair share of it, making it almost impossible for Nephias to win any of their matches. She lost much more than she won, almost always by a few fractions of a second, which was seemingly not conducive to training at all. What was the point of training if one of the participants had almost no chance of winning because of how large the gap between them and their opponent was? There was a reason why Nef had never used Sunny as a sparring partner in the past, after all. But then, with a bit of amusement, he realized that Changing Star was doing exactly what he had done with the Stone Saint. She was tempering herself against an overwhelming force. That's why she had instructed Castor to use just enough of his aspect ability to always be much faster than her. Losing in a fight against a superior opponent was truly the best way to learn. Ha! So I was right in my approach, after all. If Changing Star was doing the same, he had to be right. The second thing he had noticed, however, was much more perplexing. It was that Nephias was not using her usual flowing and unpredictable battle style. Instead, she was moving with precise and firm elegance. hiding behind a carefully woven wall of defense and patiently waiting for an opening to appear, instead of creating one herself. While intricate and impressive, this style was still a bit lacking in comparison to her real one. What's more, while it was deliberate and dependable, it was also rigid. If there was one thing that Nephi's would never tolerate in her battle art, it was rigidity. Her whole worldview was built around the idea that nothing had more value than adaptability. That's why the style she had taught Sunny suited her so well. It was designed to be the epitome of changeability. So, the question was, why the hell she was using something so alien to her against Castor? The answer was pretty obvious. Either Nephi was trying to experiment with something new in an effort to adopt elements of this style into her own, which didn't seem very likely, or she didn't want Castor to know her true combat style too well, for some reason. But what could that reason be? Sunny rubbed his chin. Interesting.